Welcome to the Content Podcast, conversations with Silicon Valley's creatives. I'm Daniel Garcia, your host and the cultivator of Content Magazine, published by SV Creates.
Hey, this is Karen.
Today we talk with Karen Gutfreund. She's a feminist, activist, artist, and curator. Hey Karen, this is Daniel. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. So good to hear from you.
Yeah, good to hear from you too. Now, I know that you've moved from the Bay Area out to New York, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and what kind of led you out there?
So we have our son-in-law was running for Congress. So while I used to live in New York City, we're now up in Syracuse, which is up near the Lake Ontario.
Okay.
And so anyway, our son-in-law was running for a U.S. Congress. And so we came out here to help him with his campaign.
Okay. Wow, that's cool. So you really are, I know we're going to get into this, but you really are involved with the connections with politics and art and influencing our culture, huh?
Yes, absolutely. So let me tell you, this really changed our life moving from the Bay Area to it's really rural here. And unfortunately, it's like he worked so hard on his campaign, but there was a Democratic primary and he was not he did not get the vote for the Democratic position.
Oh.
But we're still here and, really deeply involved with politics.
Yeah, cool. So what I kind of like to do for this interview is kind of break down your life maybe in like three different aspects of who you are and kind of see, I'm just very curious of how the transition kind of had went. So, see art, activism, and curation and curator. At first, I just want to start out about you as an artist, and when did kind of like your involvement in art and creativity, when did that kind of start for you, and what was those beginning stages?
It really was in college. I did not take any art classes before then, and I went off and I was actually a nursing major.
Really?
For 2 weeks. For 2 weeks, because I think that's another part of my personality that will lead into the activism of always wanting to help people.
Yeah.
But just I think just getting away from home, having the first freedom, and I was just completely drawn into art. And so in addition to getting a degree in photographic design, which was also very paper-based, I also got a degree in art history, which then led me into, moving from, I went to University of Georgia in Athens, moving to New York City. And I was very lucky in that one of my first jobs was at a blue chip gallery and then the Museum of Modern Art in the painting and sculpture department.
Yeah. So then, that's interesting. So you didn't have kind of like a lifelong history of like painting and dabbling with mixed media or anything like that. It was kind of more came alive in college.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
So I think I think a reason that happened is I have an identical twin, and she is actually a fabulous painter. She is really, really good. So where my style has always been like text-based and think of Cy Twombly, she was more a very figurative painter and like Norman Rockwell. So not at all so our styles were so different. And she was very prolific through high school. So we sort of had this thing, whatever she did, I would do something totally opposite. Okay. So it wasn't until...
Kind of like the twin competition?
Yes, yeah, exactly. I know. And so it wasn't until, we went to separate colleges our first year. And, where then I sort of, developed my own voice. It's like, hold it. Just because she does it doesn't mean I can't. And I discovered how much I loved it.
Yeah, that's great. Were your parents artists as well, or did they draw or paint or?
My dad was, and he brings this up all the time that I told him one time that he was a horrible artist. I guess my little inner curator. I don't know. I do not remember that conversation at all, but I told him I didn't like his paintings, and then he stopped working. I think it's also too because we had such a large family and he was working all the time. Yeah. But so I always feel bad about that as my very first curatorial statement was to my dad.
Well, yeah, I guess that is kind of like a lesson in, the power of words and
Yes,
right
yes.
and like a position of curating what that can do. So your voice, you do definitely mixed media. You do a lot of large art with text and what would you describe kind of like for you for your art particularly? What's your kind of voice and style?
So my voice and style, I have two different series that I work on. One is very political art, and the other is where I focus on mantras. And so I think what I'll do is like talk more about like the mantra art. So I
Yeah.
have a deep love of words and vocabulary and what like the essence of words and what they mean. And
Yeah.
so what I do with my work is it's all very it's large. I think the smallest I ever do is maybe like a 40 by 40, but I
Yeah.
do them in series so I could like blanket a whole room. Is I um, like save words that may sound funny, but like then I'll incorporate them in the meanings in and with mantras like this too shall pass,
Yeah.
or I have another series called Control Alt Delete where with a computer when you hit those keys you wipe yourself clean and you can reinvent yourself. And so I have a large series where I've worked with that concept about reinventing yourself. And so what I'll do is take all these words and like with shapes and lots of color and also on multiple layers of resin. So I
Yeah.
always have shadows within my art, um, where where I'll either, stencil or hand paint, whatever I'm doing. It's like, it's all very multi-layered where I'm getting a message across, but it's also somewhat like hidden.
Yeah.
Also,
Yeah.
be what I try to do is like with messages or either like words of say like lyrics of a songs
Hmm.
are is also uh, a big, very big part of my work. Like all my favorite songs. I just recently did a series for a gallery in San Francisco and so I incorporated all my favorite lyrics from different songs and just how
Yeah.
I like to connect with other people and their stories
Yeah.
on, what those words meant to me.
Yeah, that's cool. How did do you think the words came into? Did you always kind of have an interest in words, and were you reading as a child or growing up, or
Oh,
what was? Do you think?
yeah, I'm a voracious reader. Where I grew up was also very rural, and there was so I just escaped into books, and I probably read 3 or 4 books a week ever since I
Wow,
was about 11.
awesome.
And then when I lived in New York, it's like I'd even read walking down the street on my, way to work or on the subway. And
Right? Yeah.
it get, yeah, like so engrossed in like Bill Bryson is one of my favorite writers. And I missed my subway stop 3 times in one week reading a book. So yeah, I just loved, and I still, every morning I read probably for about an hour and a half before I even get out of bed.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Only unfortunately now, rather than good, literature, I'm reading news, which
Oh
that's a
yeah.
whole nother story on like where that puts you in the mind space. But
Yeah.
no, I've always been just a really big reader.
Yeah. That's great. So then, how did you make the transition then? So you were in photographic design and art history, and then you were able to get a position, I guess, in New York, in a
Yes.
gallery. Okay, so were you still doing your practicing your own art at that time too, as well, or?
I was, and I was sort of moving. I was like one credit away from also getting a degree in printmaking.
Oh,
So
okay.
with the photographic design, it was all very like emulsion based
Mm-hmm.
rather than like, of course, now everybody just does digital. I was using 4 by 5 cameras
Oh,
and
great.
printing through like paper negatives where you could
Sure.
actually, or very sophisticated pinhole photography.
Right. Yeah.
So that sort of led into like works on paper and then works on fabric.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so, but actually, once I started working at MoMA in the painting and sculpture department, I put down my fine art for like almost a decade.
Oh, really?
And
Okay.
yeah, and focused on, I was then actually doing furniture design.
Hmm.
And I know it was because like at that young age, I was only like 21 when I hit New York, was just being surrounded by so many amazing artists at the
Yeah.
museum stifled my voice, and where I thought like, oh gosh, there's no way I can compete. So I, moved into, I did a lot of uh, like decorative furniture painting, so like super intricate designs on tables and dressers, and then I would, sell those.
Okay, so kind of moved from like thinking in terms of like fine art to more of kind of like
Right.
commercial
Yes.
art or something like that,
Yes.
because you were
Yeah.
kind of uh, in awe or something, kind of like stunned at the work that you
Right.
were seeing in the gallery. Sure, that makes sense. So,
Yeah, yeah. And it's
yeah,
like, and I look back, I wish someone would have just sort of kicked me in the butt and said, hey, just like keep going for it. Because it's like everybody's, I mean, of course, there's like child geniuses, but,
yeah,
to really be an artist, you just have to do it every day. And it's
yeah,
that practice. It's not only like practice as a verb, but practice as a noun.
yeah, totally. Yeah, that's right. So there's a lot of sweat that has to come out as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and
Now,
quit being so hard on yourself. That's like advice I always like to give to younger people, or wish I could have given it to a younger me. Don't be so hard on yourself. Because like if one piece doesn't work out, paint
yeah,
over it, start again, try again tomorrow.
yeah. But how did you move then from doing art and kind of like commercial art, creativity in order to sell and to make a living on the side and work in the gallery? How did that move into activism?
So I actually went from art and doing the more craft art, if you will, that sort of thing,
Yeah.
into back into being a fine artist. Then it was Curator, and it's
Oh,
only been really in the last couple of years, like say the last four, well, yeah, the last 4 years, 4 or 5 years, that I've really moved into like the activist curation.
okay.
So the way I shifted, or I should really say, I paired the being an artist with a curator,
Mm-hmm.
is, as you know, female artists get the short end of the stick.
Yeah.
They're less than, um, it's like 8% in museum collections. Things are changing a little bit, but not very much. And so what I found over, like the last 15 years is women artists aren't getting attention. So
Yeah.
in addition to doing my own work, I was like, okay, well then I'm going to make a difference. If galleries and spaces aren't showing
Right.
women's artwork, well then I'm going to make it happen.
Right. Yeah.
And so to date, I've done probably like 35 national exhibitions focus on female, self-identified female artists.
Cool.
And so, yeah, I pulled the shows. And so it started very small. It was just like my very first one was just at a coffee shop.
Right.
And, and now coming up this year, opening actually on September 11th, I have a show at the Museum of Sonoma County
Okay.
for a feminist show. So
Cool.
it's been a long road. It's been a great road, but so it's like you just started doing a small show that grew into bigger and bigger and bigger shows.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I guess so. So, was your experience being around galleries and museums that you noticed the lack of women representation? So you started to
Yes.
kind of do it on your own. So, what was it like? Starting to think in terms of bringing that together. What was? I mean, the coffee shop probably was a pretty low pressure, but what's some of the things that you had to deal with and lessons that you've learned from that one to what you're doing now? That's even going to be up in Sonoma.
Yeah. So one thing I've learned, a really important lesson, is collaboration. Is because like a lot of times I would, boy, this is a really good question, because it's like years of like
Yeah.
work. Um, is really working and networking with other people. Say just
Yeah.
like, for example, how I met you, like in,
Yeah.
in our community in Silicon Valley, and where you start branching out. So it's like the more you collaborate with other organizations, and finding synchronicities, the then the bigger your pond gets, to where you're going from, and where you get more recognition, where people are saying, wow, she really puts good shows together. Let's,
Yeah.
let her have our, nonprofit space. Because most of all my shows, there's been a couple in commercial galleries, like what's considered the White Cube Gallery, but most of
Sure.
them are small museums, university galleries, and nonprofit spaces.
Yeah. Okay.
So of I think it's determination and persistence of,
Yeah.
being, yeah, involved in different art organizations. So I always tell people that's really important. Like, get involved not only in your community, but in national organizations too. And then the more you're working with people, you just get opportunities just land in your lap.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's not easy and it takes years, but it's like, but you just keep working on those and like helping other people with what they're doing. And then I find the more I help people, the more it like comes back to me, which is
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, you build relationships and trust, and
Yes.
then when there is somebody who has some sort of need, and they're thinking like, but wait a second, I met Karen, right? And then it kind of like starts to come together.
Right.
Okay, so that it was kind of the art, and then more towards curating. But even that curation that you began had somewhat of an activism theme to it, right? Because you were trying to profile and give voice to women, right?
Yes. So I would say um, all of my shows have always had very like activist themes. So whether it was feminism, and then all sorts of categories and themes under that, whether like it's identity or control or um, all sorts of different topics. So
Yeah,
each show, it's like, because I've personally have just always gravitated to work with a message, work that's trying to say something rather
right.
than, I don't know. Have you ever heard of the big red and shiny?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so this big red and shiny, it's like if you want to sell work, make it big, make it red, make
Oh,
it shiny.
okay, yeah,
And for me, it's like I just don't have a lot of time for work like that because
sure.
it's like, oh, I just painted it because I like the color red. It's like, no, like what I'm drawn to and I've become known for is pulling artists together on on common themes that are trying to make a difference. And I
Yeah,
think that's the underlying thing in my work is really trying to change or just like to show hearts and minds, and then people take from the art what they will because it's such a personal thing, but
yeah,
to really try to just put out beautiful, strong, empowering messages that
yeah,
will help help make this a better place.
yeah, yeah. So I think that's the thing you kind of said earlier when you started to go into nursing. Um, so that's been kind of a theme, would you say, kind of like in your personality to like, I guess, help, right? And so
Yes.
your art, your curation and the activism is you see that as in helping what and who and where.
Yeah, so trying to like one to like to give people their voice, and also like art, not I'm not an art therapist whatsoever, and like people who do that, that's amazing, but it's like, but just here's an example of I had actually, it was my first largest show. It was a show called Control, and
Mm-hmm.
it was at Soma Arts Cultural Center in 2009, and it had 110 women artists all on the theme of control. And I
Yeah.
remember at the opening, because the work was all the artists submitted work, and it was actually juried by the Guerrilla Girls. They It was on issues of what control meant to them. And that night at the opening, I literally had like people coming up to me like crying
Oh
because
wow.
it's like the in both like in a positive, and sometimes a few people were actually triggered
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
some of the images, but then later, like they came back and said, looking at this such a powerful collection of work, like even if they weren't an artist themselves, it gave voice to be able to
Sure.
work through issues and to think of things differently. And more importantly, with all my shows, even though they can be intense subjects, I try to have it have an underlying empowering message of, okay, you faced adversity, these are things you faced. Now what are you going to learn to like transcend to the next level?
Yeah.
And so that's what I try to put into my shows. So I'm not sure, I hope that did that answer the
Yeah.
question.
No, it did. Yeah.
Okay.
And actually that then I mean that definitely brings, the idea of the activism, kind of what's you're kind of doing, giving that voice. And then so that really leads into this current project that you have, the book, or you calling it a book or a catalog, for the not
It's sort
normal?
of, yeah, I think I'm calling it a book
Yeah.
slash collection,
Collection.
but
Okay.
it is still sort of a catalog because I do have I have artist statements in it, and I wrote a long essay in it. But I always sort of think as a book of like over 50% text and then images. And this book is actually 213 pages
Yeah.
with 350 pieces of artwork.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
And so
So
right now it's like,
this is definitely a voice, right?
yes.
And
Oh, it
so
is a visual protest.
right, yeah. And so the name of the book is Not Normal: Art in the Age of Trump. So uh why don't you what's the message you're trying to communicate with this book? I mean, it's
So,
somewhat obvious,
uh,
but when
so
you
with
see it.
this, it's a visual. It's documenting a a groundswell movement of artists across the country raising their paintbrushes and their voices in a visual protest to our President Trump and the current administration.
Hmm. Yeah, there's some powerful images and some great art that's there. It's really incredible. And you said there's like 350 pieces of work and like 147 artists that
Yes, that's
participate.
correct.
Yeah. Uh, Before we kind of get into that, I just want to ask you, what's it like then? What's even like the legal way? How to put together a collection like this and to sell it? What's kind of like the rights of the artists that are involved in that?
So with so I have an agreement with all the artists where they have all agreed. Of course, every artist keeps the copyright to their own work.
Yeah.
And what I'm doing, like from say the legal aspect of this book, because it is available on Amazon, is and all the artists agreed to this, so they had to agree to this if they wanted to participate in the book, is
Yeah.
that the proceeds from the sale of the book are going to go to the Sue's Foundation Artist and Activist Fund, which
Okay.
is helping artists during COVID.
Okay.
And then
Yeah.
also a percentage is going back to all of the artists in the book. So
Yeah.
it'll be, and I did this entire project as a volunteer.
Yeah.
So, but I do have three pieces of my own work in there. So I will be counted as one of the artists for full
Sure.
disclosure. So, what I'm doing with this is like, so, you know, we'll see, since I pretty much just launched the book a couple weeks ago, is, will be the proceeds for the Artists and Activists Fund. It's an amazing foundation
Yeah.
that's really helping, just like micro grants, if you will, to artists
Yeah. That's great.
across the country. And then also, I really want to be able to give back to all the artists that participated.
Yeah.
But of all the people I reached out to, because I did so much research for this book, which pretty much has kept me busy during the pandemic,
Yeah.
is there's only one person I reached out to that turned me down.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great.
And so everybody else, they were absolutely thrilled to be included and to be able to um, lend their voice to this visual protest.
Yeah. It's quite a collection. I mean, in many ways, I think it's kind of chronologues what's happening now, right? I mean, in many ways, and I think
Yes.
it's kind of an important, not only art piece, political statement, but historic kind of document in a way. It's really fascinating. So you put this all together, and you did it. When did you come up with the idea? When was kind of like day one when you first sent out the first email? Was that just
So,
all during
yes.
COVID?
So, no, because this actually started. So, living here in Syracuse, it's so serendipitous. There's a gallery called Art Rage,
Okay.
and it's one of the only activist art galleries in the country. And so I'm so happy that, hold it, I landed here
Yeah.
and here's this gallery. And they had, this was like late October, an event called Not Normal.
Okay.
And it was a night of poetry and film and theater. And so I reached out to the gallery director and I said, hey, I could fill your gallery with art just like that. No
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
And she said, well, we already have a show up, but why don't you come in and I created version, version one of the book had 38 artists with 55 pieces.
Okay.
So that was really easy. I mean, I just like sort of went through my database and reached out to the artist, said, "Hey, are you okay with this?" And they
Yeah.
were like, "Yeah, sure." And so that night I went and I gave a presentation, and we had throughout the evening the continuous slideshow going.
Yeah.
Then, after that, particularly, I thought, okay, yeah, I think I'll do, enlarge this. But it really wasn't until the pandemic hit and I saw what a horrible response our president and the
Mm-hmm.
administration,
Mm-hmm.
how they were responding, where then I like really kicked in and started doing research for version 2, where
Yeah.
it's grown so much.
Yeah. Well, that was
So,
the thing. I even noticed too. There was one piece. I mean, it's obviously very current because there's one piece that has President Trump wearing one of those hats with the, like the two drinking straws on the side, and it's Clorox, right?
oh, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. So that's the thing. When I noticed that, I was like, okay, this is, and just, doing a magazine and publishing, and, it's like sometimes the lead time is quite, large. I was like, wow, this is very recent and current. Yeah. So,
Oh, and now people are like reaching out to me that was such amazing work where I wish, and
yeah.
God forbid if he gets elected again, there
Yeah.
will be a version 3 of the book, and I will find a really big gallery space to have an exhibition.
Yeah. This would be
But
such a great
that's,
exhibition. Yeah.
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 So doing self-publishing, I have to say, because I did this through, it's called KDP Amazon
Mm-hmm.
printing.
Yeah.
So it's really simple in that you upload I mean, of course, you have all the time in laying out your book, but you just upload the PDF
Yeah.
and there you have it.
Yeah.
And within a couple of days, it's ready to go. So it really gave me the flexibility um, to get work in real time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Yeah. So I've heard you, I think I've heard you say this, maybe it was in the video, but uh, protest is patriotic.
Yes.
So talk about that. What's your kind of view on that?
Yeah. So what I'm seeing all the time, and when we go back to and I think I'm going to mispronounce his last name, so I'll just call it the football player Colin
Kaepernick.
Kirkpatrick,
Kaepernick. Yeah.
Kaepernick. Um, when he would kneel on, on the
Yeah.
football field and was getting such.
Yeah.
I just don't understand like the backlash against that. It's like it's peaceful protest.
Right.
And it harkens back to it's like it's our First Amendment right. It's
Yeah.
like freedom of expression. That's the number one thing that we can say and hold up as an American. This is what's important is I can say what I think.
Yeah.
And we don't even have to get into like hate speech. Let's not go there. But like
Sure.
when you have an opinion, when you want to say something, and that is patriotic, where it's like you
Yeah.
don't have to agree with people, but you do have to give. Everyone has a voice. Every single person has a voice, and
Yeah.
so and one thing I wish is like we as like Democrats would like take back the American flag. Like
Yeah.
um, why has that sort of become like a Republican thing
Right.
of
Yeah.
where this is all of our country, everybody, whether
Yeah.
you're red or blue or whatever. And it's like, and being able to voice your opinion on a soapbox, online, standing in the town square, that to me is like it's like really celebrating what it means to be an American.
Yeah. It's funny to me too, just how we unpack history. If we really look at it, I mean, the Declaration of Independence is a protest document.
Yes, yes, exactly.
When it comes to a point in history where we can't stand the government is basically what that's saying. And we're the rebellion to
Right.
to Great Britain. And so it's kind of interesting that tradition and understanding is kind of lost, and somehow there's a view of America that doesn't understand that we are a nation of protesters, rebellious people. I think it comes into the nature of everything that we do is
Right.
like rebellion.
Right.
Freedom, freedom was tainted
Yeah.
with this rebellious kind of attitude.
Yeah, it makes me want to start singing the Janis Joplin song. Freedom's just another word
Yeah,
for.
nothing else to lose. Yeah. What was some of the surprises that came to you in putting together Not Normal?
um Boy, probably like how many people share sort of the same common values
Yeah.
of what I think are amazing. And that's why I mean, I know with this book, it's like people who are Trumpers or really, his base, this is not going to change anybody's minds. But it's
Yeah.
like, but it's the common thread of from artists across the country and actually internationally. I have a bunch of artists from all over the world also in
Hmm.
this book, is just like people want common decency.
Yeah.
And that is what we are lacking so much right now is like civility and common decency and like
Yeah.
looking out for the little guy. And
Yeah.
I mean, and I shouldn't say that wasn't, it shouldn't be surprising, but it's just so heartwarming to me, which is like, which kept me working on this for like months and months where I really haven't done anything else but like
Yeah.
researching the artists and helping them with their artist statements and doing,
Yeah. Yeah.
all this work. But it's just how people really want positive change,
Yeah.
and it's comes out loud and clear through their works, even though it's all like slamming our current president for all the different atrocities.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's like that common thread of wanting, yeah, just I don't know, maybe wanting to. Boy, I think I've lost my train of thought there. I was going to
No,
say
no.
wanting things to go back to normal, but I think that's more like rolling into like how everybody feels, sort of stuck at home for the last 6 months. So I
Yeah.
think I went a bit off topic there, um, but I think just the volume of work, because a lot of these artists, many of them have done entire series, and
Yeah.
that to me was surprising because there's, some in there, some artists who usually do like landscape paintings and they only did one piece.
Yeah.
But my focus was more on like artists who do fine art and like have done like 10, 15, 20 pieces.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Just the
so, and you got
the
to think
level
too,
of
like,
angst or disappointment and voice and rage, right? That's
yeah, rage and
yeah.
also like commitment. What I'm seeing too, it's like from these artists, it's like they are committed to making statements, particularly going back to the artist that did the pieces with the sipping bleach out of one of
Yeah.
his hats. He's so prolific. He calls himself Sam Adams because he's actually gotten so many death threats
Oh,
from
funny.
his work.
Sure.
But of just wanting to bring light to these issues,
Yeah.
and because pictures always say way more than words.
Yeah.
So it's like what that's been surprising is like because it's hard looking at that orange face every day.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like that is surprising, like the level of commitment that these artists have taken
Yeah.
to trying to make a statement.
Yeah. So you did mention something, and this is kind of like it's interesting. So uh, this for those that if artist communication and if there's going to be transformation through dialogue, um, but those that are Trump supporters to see this book, right? I mean, how many converts are you going to have to, uh,
Hmm.
you know, how does that all play out? I guess you have to get one,
You know
save one
what?
starfish on the beach.
Yeah, I think with this book, and I'm just going to have to say it's not going to change any minds. I mean, maybe people who are uh, undecided
Yeah.
and what I'm really hoping to, because like I know this will not change the minds of anyone who is like the true base
Right.
person, and not just meaning base like as in low, but like one of Trump's base. But
Yeah.
what I'm really hoping is like people would look at some of these images. Like there's one, artist Eric Almanza. He's an artist in LA, and he did this amazing painting of it looks like the Norman Rockwell, The Hate We All Live With, where it's like the little girl
Mm-hmm.
walking amongst
Yeah.
like four policemen,
Yeah.
and it's like it's a little Hispanic girl, and they have all these racial slurs on the wall. And I hope like people, if you know that Rockwell painting, but it's like, how can that not affect anyone with a heart? You
Yeah.
know, I mean, to many of these works are like that, where
Yeah.
it's um, yeah, it's just, it goes to like your core of like, children in cages. It's
Yeah.
like, I think you have to be a pretty hardcore,
Yeah.
I was about to say a swear word, but a pretty hardcore butthead not to like look at something like that and not feel compassion.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what I'm hoping it's like, because is that many of these images will get out into the mainstream and that will create empathy,
Yeah.
because that's what we need. It's like we can't have everybody as other. We need to like be able to look at and really, care about everyone,
Yeah.
not just, the blonde-haired, blue-eyed Aryans,
Yeah.
which this nationalism is bringing about.
Yeah. So let's talk about that too. I mean, blonde hair, blue eyes, uh, white privilege.
Yeah,
And I mean, you would be some, and then, I hate to say it, but your name is even Karen. So you have
I
a,
know.
you have a lot of,
I got it all
yeah,
against me right now. It's
right,
like I am blonde, I have blue eyes,
right,
German,
right. Yeah.
Karen.
Right. So, how is that going for you? What's your, in this kind of what's going on right now in our culture and stuff like that? What's going on in your mind and your heart with that? Do you feel in some ways like you understand the rage against that, and at the same time, it's like, well, that's not me. Is that kind of, or what's going on?
Yeah, so I'm trying really hard to just be more of an ally and listen first, speak later
Yeah.
type of thing, because it's like I know it's like, I mean, um, I do come from a place of privilege, even though, I completely put myself through college. I've been on my own since I was 17. I still, you know, I keep harking back to songs, but I guess, that's my thing. It's
Yeah.
like how to open doors with just a smile.
Hmm.
It's like there's a lot of privilege that goes with
Yeah.
that. And I know that I have it. And
Yeah.
so what I try to do, and I think that's why I work so hard on stuff like this, it's like because I am incredibly empathetic and of trying to see and feel what is it like to be in someone else's shoes,
Yeah.
and yeah, to try to do what I can. But it's like, but no, it's like this white privilege thing is real.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's astonishing to me when people don't acknowledge that. It's like, you have no idea. And I mean,
Yeah.
actually, I can't even say that because I really don't have any idea. I mean,
Right.
I can be an ally and look on it from the outside, but, that's why I think it's so important. Like the protest is patriotic. It's like we're a melting pot, and we can't just, the the privileged few. It cannot be the ones that control everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Well, what do you have going on next? What's after this project? This has been pretty consuming, but
Yeah.
what's next?
So I have an exhibition that's going to be opening actually at three spaces here in Syracuse. And I'm hoping maybe even like some more like pop up places. It's a show called Deadlocked and Loaded Disarming America.
Okay.
And it's about our culture of violence and gun issues.
Mm-hmm.
And now, particularly, it's like I thought I had the show pretty much curated, but now everything that's happened,
Yeah.
over the past couple months with civil rights and just all the Black Lives Matters. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, um, in fact, probably pretty much today, I'm going to be like really digging in and doing a lot more research and changing the artist list to
Yeah.
uh, go along more like with what's been happening.
Yeah.
And so that's going to open this coming February
Okay.
in at Art Rage Gallery here in Syracuse, and another space that's called the Community Art Folk Art Foundation, and another gallery that's called Point of Contact on the Syracuse University campus.
Cool.
And I also hope with that to do. Are you familiar with the artist JR, who does all the portraits and then they wheat paste them all over the
Oh,
place?
yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so I plan on, it's like I really want to do that. Although wheat pasting posters outside in February in Syracuse, probably so I have to like I'm working on that one, but that's really I've always wanted to work with him, and so I'm
Great.
trying. I need to find like the space where we can make that happen, where all the where the work wouldn't get destroyed.
Yeah. First rain. Yeah.
And Yeah, and then next after that, opening next September, and I will be living back in California, which I'm
Right, great.
really happy about. Um, well, I'll have a show. It's called Agency, Feminist Art and Power, that will open at the Museum of Sonoma County. And this one, oh my God, it's amazing. I have everything from like Judy Chicago, Michelene Thomas, a bunch of really, really fabulous Bay Area women artists. And
Great.
so I'm really, really looking forward to
And
that one.
when does that open up?
That opens on September 11th.
So next year, a year
Yeah,
from now.
yeah, it was supposed to have opened this past August. And
Sure.
of course, like everything has been like, so thank goodness it was just postponed rather than canceled,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that was like a couple years of work,
Yeah.
and and so I'm really looking forward to that. And I really hope we have a vaccine so we can just have like what I miss so badly is like big art openings,
Right.
because
Yeah.
you do all this work and it's my favorite thing in the world is like standing in the gallery before that all by myself before the openings begins and just breathing it all in and then just having like hundreds of people come in.
Yeah.
And we may still have to be where I don't know. I just will cross that bridge when we get to it.
Yeah. Yeah. It is great just to see that. I mean, to see people's reaction to work and
Yes.
the conversations
Yeah.
and the networking and the friendships being made. I think that's the other
Right. It's just so joyful.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like to have, I mean, it's like such a celebration. It's like it's one thing having work in your studio and it has been great, like all the creativity that we've seen online during this shutdown.
Yeah.
But there's nothing like physically being with the work.
Yeah.
And so that's what, gosh, I just, I'm so looking forward to that.
Yeah. Cool. Me too. And I'm looking forward to maybe I'll see you, if not before, September 11th, 2021.
Yes.
Up there for
Yeah.
It sounds really good. I'd love to come up. So.
Yeah. Oh, and we have another thing planned too with this one. It's like I'm working with the Feminist Art Project that's based out of Rutgers University. We want to do this. It's like part of our programming, so we're planning it. We're going to have a night called Feminists Are Funny.
Okay.
And so like to stand up feminist comedians.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so that would be a really good time to come up and see the show and then see that perform.
The performances, that'd be awesome. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Karen. I really appreciate what you're doing. I'm really just really moved by the work that's in Not Normal. And thank you for putting that together, and hope that our listeners will get their hands on one as well. So.
Yeah. And if I could just do one more plug for that.
Totally.
I think one of the hardest things, the hardest thing about being an independent curator, it's not doing the work and the research, it's getting the word out there. So that's why, oh my gosh, I'm so thankful, and it's so great to chat with you. But so if we have any listeners out there that are bloggers or writers, it's like, sure. Please get a hold of me and I can get you all sorts of materials, because, it's sort of like if that tree falls in the forest and explodes, but nobody's there. Yeah.
It's such a
get that reference.
It's such a difficult time right now with so many different aspects of communication coming through for things, to kind of get out there. And it's odd on what clicks and explodes.
Right.
And it's not just somebody knowing how to do the SEOs. There's just, something that catches. So I hope this catches.
I know.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Karen, and the best to you and your family.
Thank you.
And I look forward to seeing you in person sometime soon.
Yeah, hopefully so. Thank you so much, Daniel.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, bye.
Bye.
To find out more about Karen, go to her website at karengutfreund.com and order her book, Not Normal, Art in the Age of Trump, through Amazon. Thank you for listening to the Content Magazine podcast. Follow us on social media at Content Mag. Visit our website to become a member and help us to continue to tell the stories of the local creators. This episode's music is Time Alone by Mild Monk. Follow him on Spotify and also on his Instagram at Mild Monk Music.